remember the docks? Yeah, they turned Times Beach, Missouri into a Superfund site. Yeah, it was, what happened is some guy, Times Beach doesn't exist anymore. It's where the Route 66 State Park is now located. The I-44 bridge that goes over the Merrimack, immediately downstream of that is another bridge, and that's the old Route 66. Well, just to the right of that, on the southwest side, I guess, of the river, was a corner that they carved out back in the 20s, I guess, and turned it into a kind of vacation land area with a bunch of vacation cottages and whatnot for mostly middle income folks, and it became very popular in the 30s and 40s and whatnot. They had a problem with dust in the 70s, and they hired this contractor who sprayed this oily stuff on the dust to help them manage it. Well, it was laced with dioxin, and then when the flood came along and just inundated that whole town, it sent the dioxin all over the place across South County, and they turned it into a EPA Superfund cleanup site, and apparently it's under control now.
Right.
Great. You don't believe it?
We actually looked at most of the
Did you really?
down the street further, so this Missouri, but
Right.
it could be in
Exactly. Next. I thought about that too. The water supply. Oh, right, for the city. Right. Or Bridge City, right? Yeah.
I'm still thinking about getting his finger fixed.
Yeah, I did.
He had the same problem, right?
I did mine. Well, this now is so much better.
You guys in the same softball team or what?
Oh, no, there we go.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've got a few short comments here, and we'll be glad to take questions. I want to first of all thank the dedicated professionals here at the National Weather Service for providing us with the most up-to-date forecast briefing this afternoon, and for their continued hard work as part of the effort to protect lives and property. Folks here are incredibly professional. We rely on them, and they don't let us down. We tremendously appreciate, especially over the holidays, how they are always there and always helpful and doing their best they can to help law enforcement and others. I'd like to introduce two of the key members of my emergency response team, the Department of Public Safety Director Lane Roberts, as well as Colonel Brett Johnson of Missouri State Highway Patrol. And of course, you all know NWS Warning Coordination Meteorologist Jim Cramper. You'll have a chance to hear from him in a minute. St. Charles County Executive Steve Ailman is with us also, as well as Kevin Cross and Representative Ann Zaire. We appreciate their focus on these issues here. Now, I just received a briefing from the meteorologist and the hydrologist here, and it's very clear that Missouri is in the midst of a very historic and dangerous flooding event. The amount of rain we received, in some places in excess of a foot, has caused river levels not only to rise rapidly, but to go to places they've never been before. Over the weekend, Missouri experienced widespread and deadly flash flooding. And just this morning, we were informed of an additional 3 flood-related deaths. This brings the total number of fatalities in this storm to 13 12 of which were caused by vehicles being swept from flooded roadways. Now that the rain has moved out, the threat has changed, but it is not by any means over, especially for communities along the rising Mississippi River and its tributaries here in the St. Louis region. Water levels in some locations are predicted to exceed the historic crest during the Great Flood of 1993, which caused significant and widespread devastation. Now, I've just come up from Perry County, where I met with local emergency management officials about the critical situation there and concerns about the local levee. For those of you who haven't been down there, there's about a 30-mile levee that is around a park there, a industrial park, as well as the airport. Significant employers there, Saberliner, Gilster Mary Lee, and we're working plans to be sure that if those have to be evacuated, we'll keep security in that area. Their concerns mirror those around the St. Louis region and around the state, quite frankly. The safety of our neighbors and protecting property whenever possible is what we are in the business of doing. Now, NWS officials predict the river at Chester, Illinois, for example. That's the bridge right there at Perryville on the Illinois side, actually the Missouri side too. That gauge is predicted to go to 49.7. That's exactly how high it got in 1993. Here in the St. Louis region, the Mississippi is expected to crest Thursday at 43.7 feet, which would be the highest level since 1993. Now, hundreds of roads have closed, including all lanes of Highway 44 west of Rolla, down near Jerome, Missouri. I'll talk about that in a minute. We also have significant Franklin County issues. The Merrimack River and its basin there is causing significant problems in Pacific, Eureka, and Union. I should say for everybody here, those problems they have now are going to get much, much worse. That rain that we had before in those rivers are rising significantly and will continue to be moving up. And here in St. Charles County, the town of West Alton has already had to be evacuated due to flooding, and we'll be working with them to make sure that process goes well. This kind of prolonged weather event can put a significant strain on local personnel and resources. It's a very serious situation, and the state of Missouri is continuing to step up with a serious response. That is why this afternoon I activated the Missouri National Guard to help support local communities and keep Missourians safe. The Guard will have very clear and specific responsibilities, including providing security in evacuated areas and directing traffic from road closures. Some of those directing traffic things are going to get complicated and big. For example, you look down on I-44 south of Rolla, that Jerome area where we're going to have a detour, that detour will exceed 30 miles to get around the section that's there. So we want to make sure that folks that have to go around that know what they're doing, especially not only in the day but also at night. It is extremely important. But the citizen soldier will provide much-needed support to the state and local first responders, many of whom have spent the last several days, over the holidays, I should note, working around the clock responding to record rainfall and flooding. All of us remember the devastating impact of the Great Flood of 1993, and that's why we've been working proactively with our local partners to prepare and respond. We expect most rivers to crest in the next few days, at which point we will begin the process of assessing damage and helping flood-impacted communities rebuild and recover. In the meantime, as river levels continue to rise, we remain laser-focused on keeping Missourians safe and protecting lives and property. I want to once again thank the entire state emergency management team, including the Missouri Department of Public Safety, the State Emergency Management Agency, the Missouri Department of Transportation, and the Missouri State Highway Patrol, who continue to work around the clock to protect the people. I'd now like to ask Jim Cramper to briefly share with you some of the highlights he provided me and our team as far as the continuing hazards due to the rivers in this region. Jim, if you would.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, on behalf of all the employees of the National Weather Service offices that serve Missouri, we would like to offer our condolences to the victims, their family and friends. You know, the primary mission of the National Weather Service is to produce information to assist in the protection of life and property. So when we have deaths during a weather event, our staff takes it very seriously. So rest assured, we will be looking at everything we did, from our forecasts to our watches, our warnings, to our messaging, the information we put out, to see what can we do better in the future. How do we get this word out to convince people to do the right thing? So that I just want to emphasize that, as the governor said, this event is not over. We've got a lot of water that we have to get out of the state, so to speak. We have countless roads that are going to stay underwater for several days. So we have to make sure people understand you simply can't drive into those roads. You've got to stay away. So I'm asking the media to help us out. Help us get this message out. You encounter a flooded road, it's very simple. You turn around, don't drown. We've been preaching it for several years now. So if we can continue to get this message out, maybe in the future we have these events, we won't have 12, 13 victims, which is what we're trying to prevent. So again, everybody get the message out. This is not done yet. We still have a lot of dangerous situations out there. So help us to spread the word. Tell people stay away from the flooded roads. It's very simple. Just turn around. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I want to thank also, before I take questions, I want to thank our volunteers and faith-based partners for all the good work they do in assisting us. It's amazing. I mean, the Red Cross and its partners are now operating 8 shelters in Missouri, including one at Francis Howell North High School. We appreciate those non-governmental organizations, especially Red Cross here, by opening shelters up and being out. Also, the number of faith-based groups. The recovery end of these sort of things is long. We're still in the response side of it, but I thank specifically the Red Cross for their work, and say to folks that if they have challenges in this area, that shelter at Francis Howell North High School is a good place to go. With that, I'll be glad to take questions. We anticipate several hundred at this point, but when I talked to Major General Danner, and we actually began working this problem as far as the potential of it, last night. But as I talked to General Danner, what we've done is co-locate one of his colonels at SEMA with a major of the Highway Patrol, and they're literally going through requests and meeting those requests. Now, the first thing that goes on is what are called LNOs, or local liaison officers, are literally leaving right now to get out to communities and counties, and they'll be checking in tonight. So we should have those folks not only in Franklin County and St. Charles County, but also down in Perry County. The first stage is for them to reach, but by tomorrow morning we should begin deploying. I know down in Perry County they're going to need some assistance late tomorrow afternoon on some security things, but you'll see the liaison officers get out to the counties tonight, followed up by very early tomorrow morning the troops moving out. We'll assess what's needed, but my sense is it'll take several hundred, especially when you get to complicated traffic issues, whether it's at 141 and 44 or at all the way out at Jerome down on that. But I think it's going to take several hundred. But we didn't put an exact number in the call up today because we wanted to work through various traffic problems, and we literally hadn't gone through the exact numbers. But what we're trying to do is switch out highway patrolmen or local police for guards in locations on the traffic side where they can do that, and then assist also on the security side to back up local folks and amplify there. But I would assume several hundred will be out between now and sundown tomorrow.
Can you say specifically what locations might likely be?
Yeah, I think that on the security side, you're gonna look at places like Perryville, where we were today, and that where you're going to have to move people out and protect it. I think also up in West Alton, where we've had an order to move people out. Those local police officers that know that community need to be working individual cases, so we'll be probably helping provide security there. And then also, then you look at the traffic side of this. I do think that 141 and 44 is a place that I think that's going to have to be shut off as far as truck traffic, maybe as far back as 270 from heading west. When you look at routes you got to go around, that one down by Jerome is, like I said, about a 40-mile route. You're going to have folks up near Camdenton and whatnot. So I think you're going to see them there. I do think one of the areas that we've learned today we see continuing problems is Franklin County. I think you're going to continue to see problems in communities there that's going to require additional assistance by the Red Cross and others. When you see water levels going up 5-6 more feet from where they are now, and they're already into homes, we're going to have some significant potential displacement there. And I think that there's a number of things that can be done by everybody, but I thank the Red Cross for being proactive. But I think you look at the Franklin County, you look at the Perry County, you look at West Alton. I do think that was heartened by the number of volunteers that showed up in the city of St. Louis today. I think they're going to win that flood fight on there by sheer force of will of people coming out and helping the way that they did. But we'll be ready to help wherever we can. But this is a flood fight and a recovery that's focused a little more east, the St. Louis area, and then south. I don't see tremendous amount of guard activity needing to go south and west. Those were flash flood things that came up and have gone down. We've got a lot of recovery issues over there, but as far as needing the guard for security or traffic, it's not necessary down there at this point.
When did 44 close near
Oh, this morning, I mean, one lane of it was closed as early as yesterday. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. Mayor Pagano, appreciate you being with us. One lane was, one side, I mean, was closed yesterday. I'm not sure the exact time. I'll have Michael confirm what time it was closed, but it's all the way across the river, across the road now. Yeah.
Sir, you talked about the guard being available for security and traffic control. Would they be available to assist in evacuations or?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we see the Guard as a force enhancement for what local law enforcement, local first responders, and local non-governmental agencies are doing. So all they're trying to do is amp up what's already going on. And if that includes things like if flood walls go and you have to evacuate folks, certainly they'll be out there to help. That's why we've been relatively broad. That's why we're doing the assignments out of the state emergency management area, which if folks have challenges, they call the state emergency management. We task folks out. But we'll have folks out here. But, yeah, we're not going to limit them to traffic, the primary focus of the first groups that go out. Anybody else? Last thing I want to say, just to follow up what Jim said, please do not drive into water. I mean, we've had 12 preventable deaths here already. 12 of the 13 deaths happened when folks drove into water. For those of you who did not see the footage of down near Neosho, Missouri, there was a backed up water next to a train track that lifted a train off the track and it fell over. It's a good sign as to how powerful water can be. I mean, if you can lift a train up and knock it over, this wasn't current. This was just the floating of the train. It's a very good example of how dangerous it can be out there. I should also note that in Franklin County, there's going to be some significant challenges here as the water moves up from both the Merrimack as well as the other affiliated rivers. Last part, I mean, we're here not only today, we'll be here when you're not here and when this thing's over. I mean, when occurrences like this happen, it's very, very important for us to be in as we respond, but equally important to be here when folks recover. And it's my full expectation that because of the magnitude of this storm, we'll reach the federal levels for reimbursement. That's about $8 million at the state level. I don't see an event of this size clearly is going to approach, if not dramatically exceed that number. So we'll be working with local folks when the water goes down to get those damage assessments done correctly afterwards. But we've got a lot of water still coming. Water is still raising. If you want to look at a silver lining right now, it looks as if there's not going to be much more rain. But the bad part of that is it's going to continue to be cold. And I would say to everybody that's outside, watch out for hypothermia. Weather like this in the 30s with all this water is a very, very good way to get dangerously sick. And folks should be careful out there. So with that, we'll continue to work these various projects, but we're right here in this part of the state at this time, especially in that Franklin County area and in this St. Charles County area. We're not crested. There are still going to be significant movement up of the water by 5 or 6 feet in some of these areas, and that's a lot of vertical water to still be getting there. And down in Perryville, you've got as much as 8 or 9 feet more of vertical water that hasn't yet gotten to crest. So we're a long way from crest, and so I think that getting folks out early like this will help make sure that we preserve life and property as best we can. Thanks, everybody.
He's gone.
It's a weather, more weather. My question for you is, how does the preparations for this flooding compare to what you guys knew and didn't know back in 2012?
Well, in terms of specifically forecasting the river levels, we're light years better than 93. At 93, really all you could do was take what rain that fell, you throw it into models and see what comes out. Now we're actually putting in forecast rainfall. So that has given us a much more heads up of, okay, here's where the river is now. We're expecting all this rain the next couple of days, so we can see a day or two in advance what this could happen.
How does that help, not only, most importantly, save lives?
Well, it gives the emergency people days to prepare. You know, most of them have known that this was coming over the weekend. It's not a surprise. It's not being sprung on them today. A lot of your emergency management personnel, we've been in contact with them through the weekend. They knew already that this was coming, so they've been making preparations. You know, you can't just get sandbags any day you want. They're getting these 2 days in advance. So by able to tell them, hey, this could happen early next week, they're planning over the weekend.
For you, what do you see as the most problematic areas in the next few days?
As the governor mentioned, parts of Franklin County, Pacific, Eureka, and then into St. Louis County, Valley Park, and the Merrimack River looks ugly. That's going to break records by a couple of feet. So that could be a very serious issue in the local area, especially the Merrimack from Pacific through Valley Park. Probably is going to see the biggest impact around here. And then further south as you get towards St. Genevieve, Chester, that area.
Do you expect more evacuations?
Probably. Again, that's up to the local entities to decide. And most of those, in most cases, are voluntary. I don't know if they literally don't like to force people to leave, but there's areas in Pacific where we know homes will go underwater. And so I know they will be actively trying to get those people out.
Jim, I know you've been doing this for a while, but a couple of days ago on the Missouri map, we had snow and flooding going on. How unique is this from a historic standpoint for you, weather-wise, to have this kind of diversity in weather going on in December in Missouri?
I would like to say it's unusual, but I've seen it before, unfortunately. Missouri is famous for that. We had 3-4 inches of snow in Kansas City, and we're looking at 10 inches of rain. It has happened before. 82, we mentioned some of the flooding in 82. That was in December of 82. So this doesn't happen every year, but it's not like we haven't seen it before. And unfortunately, when you're in the Midwest, this is the kind of weather we face, unfortunately, all too often.
Any changes in your forecasting for the river in the last few hours noteworthy?
There have been a few minor adjustments here or there. We've noticed a couple of points that aren't quite perfectly lining up with where they are now and what the forecast is. So no big shifts really, but we're going to check on a couple sites specifically to get with the River Forecast Center and say, hey, we're running a little high here than what the forecast is, and then they will make adjustments. But
Your name is spelled C-R-A-M-P-E-R?
K,
Oh, I'm sorry,
K-R-A-M-P-E-R,
K-R-A-M. And your title?
Warning Coordination Meteorologist.
What can the public do, or what do they need to know about the freezing, like the temperatures dropping that are coming up over this whole week?
Yes, we're looking at finally a return to some winter-type temperatures here, somewhat normal for December, late December, early January. So it's not going to be like single digits or anything, but when you're in the 30s, and if you're out there fighting something like this, you got to stay dry. Don't get wet, because 32 degrees and you're wet, that's a bad scenario. So anybody who has to involve with fighting these floodwaters, emphasize don't do it for a long time. An hour, take a break, warm up, then go back out. Stay as dry as possible. Don't be wet and out in temperatures in the 30s. That's a bad combination. Anything else? No? Oh, shoot. Now I have to leave, huh?